Hi everyone, it's Ran here. Welcome to my room, guys. I hope you're well today. Today is actually Christmas Eve, though I do not think that this video will be released on Christmas Eve, as I already have quite a bit of a backlog of videos that are waiting to be released, and they're all scheduled in the appropriate fashion. In any case, in this video, we will be talking about the next phases of Jungian existentialism, the project that I initiated with this book. And let me seize this opportunity to remind you that you can still get this book. You can get it at the links available in the description box down below, all the Amazon websites. If you have any question, you're not finding the website you need to get, just drop me a comment and I'll get back to you. This is the most in-depth investigation you'll find on the INFJ so far in the literature available. So if you want to deepen your understanding, this is a book to get paperback or ebook format, less than $10. The Ecstatic Soul. Isn't that a nice name for the kind of person, the kind of soul that the INFJ is? It's funny because some people have asked me, why ecstatic? Soul we understand because INFJs are often associated with old souls, and it seems that the word soul has this nice metaphysical ring that suits an INFJ type of temperament. But why ecstatic? And the thing is, there's two dimensions of ecstatic. There's the meaning of ecstatic, meaning, when you're in an ecstatic trance, which, if you think about it, is actually not that surprising a term to describe an INFJ, because a lot of INFJs are mystics, or rather a lot of mystics are INFJs and they experience these ecstatic trances. But also because originally the word ecstatic means outside oneself. Ecstatic, there's something related to the word exit as well. And outside oneself, out-of-body experiences, alienated from the outside world, you see the connection. So the ecstatic soul has this double meaning, which I think is lovely. Now, if you look carefully at this book, it says here, last paragraph, the ecstatic soul is the manifesto of Jungian existentialism, foreshadowing a new movement in personality theory. So that's the first volume. The original book, the original work of Jungian existentialism, written about INFJs as their subject matter by an INFJ for reasons that are quite clear and that I will return to briefly, means that there has to be more books, there has to be more work in order to turn that nice endeavor into something that is actually a real movement that becomes something that has its own history, its own organism, its own future. In this video, I want to enter into more detail about what that future will look like, might look like, what you can do to contribute to it, and why part of me thinks more and more that this is a peculiarly INFJ endeavor. For the sake of the Jungian community as a whole, of course, I will not let my inferiority dominate. I will beat this. For the sake of the community as a whole, which is just in the same way that we can very well imagine frameworks of personality that are best addressed by INTPs, maybe something very systematic, very precise, very analytical. INTJ is something that maybe is a little bit like the INTP version, but with a more practical side to its more direct world application, or ENTJ for that matter, and sensor approaches as well. The INFJ approach, I think, is something that is bound to look a bit like Jungian existentialism, and I also happen to think that the vocational existence that I advocate as the form of the de-alienated INFJ, the enlightened INFJ, in this book, in chapter 3, I think this is exemplified not just inside the book in theory, but also in actual practical life, right here, right now, with the development of this book, my work, and Jungian existentialism. I keep going on about how the enlightened INFJ, or the INFJ on the path to enlightenment, is an INFJ that has a collaborative existence in some way, who ceases to conceive of interactions with other people as a need to prove their worth or as a need to defend themselves against criticism. In other words, to adopt a defensive attitude that reflects a defensive perspective on how the world works and how the social world operates. But INFJ who opens their arms to the social world. And when they hear words that sound critical, what they hear is not critique, but an invitation to continue collaborating, make one's words more specific. So in a sense, it is true that the self, the concept of the self as traditionally conceived, is questioned by this approach, because what's implied is that, the self is multiple in some way, but that's a philosophical implication of the work of Jungian existentialism that will have to be ironed out, and that could be for a future series of videos, it could also be for future work. In any case, Jungian existentialism is still in its infancy. Now, before I start talking about what could be the topic of the next book in Jungian existentialism, and that will be a separate project from the book on introverted intuition. Now, this next book on of Jungian existentialism in this movement would be much more of a priority to me right now than with a book on NI. That does not exclude NI. It's also possible that I would integrate my work, specific historical work on NI, inside the book on the next book, after the Ecstatic Soul. We'll see if that can work in a coherent fashion. But it is my priority because I want to continue excavating the INFJ type as my principal mode of exploration. In a prior video, which is at the time I'm releasing this video, or recording this video rather, has not been released yet, but it's quite possible that it will be released before this video, I talk about the fact that I'm ideally suited to explore the INFJ personality much more than other personalities. And this is linked to why I think Jungian existentialism is ideally served by INFJs. Consider this. Jungian existentialism, the work I pursued in the Ecstatic Soul, is one of the very few, if not the only book, in personality theory and typology today that doesn't really adopt a third-person perspective, but a first-person perspective. In other words, you're not reading a book where some kind of third-person narrator tells you INFJs have those traits, INFJs are made for those jobs, INFJs have those properties. These are what the options are for INFJs. INFJs are good at flirting or not good at flirting. This is what INFJs can do when they're flirting. This is what you will usually come across and similarly apply to other types. This book and Jungian existentialism, sure, I do talk about the INFJ in the third person, but really the reader is made to feel that the topic, the subject that is being talked about is them. It's not a third person. It's not something disincarnated. It's a third person account of a first person experience, which I call the qualitative experience as opposed to the quantitative list of attributes that a personality has. So there's something much more intimate about existentialism. The word existentialism in the phrase Jungian existentialism means precisely this: to examine consciousness not from the point of view of a third-person description of quantitative list-like attributes, but as an exploration of what it actually is like, what it feels like to have that consciousness. And once you clarify this, it's very clear why only an INFJ could write a book about INFJs from the Jungian existentialist perspective. It's because I am only familiar with the first-person experience of being an INFJ. I'm not familiar with the first-person experience of being an INTJ. I'm familiar with third-person accounts of INTJs. So what I'm saying is, the promise of Jungian existentialism is that it's lot more intimate, a lot closer to experience than third-person accounts, and which is why a book in that vein on INFPs could only be written by an INFP, because only they know what it feels like to be an INFP. It's a very difficult project and enterprise to succeed in giving an account of what it feels like to be an INFJ if you're an INFJ, or an INFP if you're an INFP. You have to use metaphor, you do have to use schematism to an extent. But, you know, if the Ecstatic Soul succeeded in speaking to people, and it is, I'm soon reaching 600 copies sold, and, you know, still going strong. I'm hoping to reach 1,000 next year. I mean, so far it appears the project is doing quite well. So it's very encouraging for me, and I want to continue doing this. Now, the project in question that I want, you know, to follow up on, the Ecstatic Soul, should not be, in my opinion, a mere reiteration of topics that I've been discussing in the Ecstatic Soul. I think that the project would be better served if I moved onto a new angle, still, of course, within the Jungian existentialist tradition, if I may call this a tradition of only one book so far, but hopefully soon two. So what that means is still from a first-person perspective, third-person account of a first-person perspective, rather than a third-person account of a third-person perspective, like all the other books you'll come across. An exploration of the qualitative experience of being an INFJ. That's what Jungian existentialism is, as applied to INFJs, and that's what I want to continue. But the next book will, and here I want to reference Coneman, one of my faithful viewers, and I want to salute him. He's not been the only one mentioning this, but I remember his comment in particular, so I just want to mention this. He said, I think at this point we would benefit from having more practical illustrations of what concretely being an alienated INFJ involves, and what being a de-alienated, embodied, prescient, vocational, and non-hazy, clear INFJ involves. Okay, we have the basics covered in this book, the theoretical aspects. We have the historical context. We have the comparison with Jungian psychology, with some of the Western metaphysics and its implications and philosophical viewpoints. Good. This book is a manifesto in a sense, and anybody who wants to get a sense of what Jungian existentialism is like and where it's going to go should start with this book. But it's only the start. In the next book, I want to explore very concrete cases. And I think this is going to be of interest to all of you, and hopefully many more besides. Because again, other types will be able to glean very useful information from this. INTJs, of course, because they're also NI dominants, but also other types. If you imagine that we take a scenario, say, okay, you work an office job, say you work in the public administration, and you have a position in the big machine. And you have a relationship with your colleagues and this and that and this job, and we can sort of explore, you're not completely satisfied with your job, and you're at in this situation in life and so on. What can you do? What do you do if you're an alienated and INFJ? Very concretely, what do you do if you're de-alienated? And we can apply this to other situations. It doesn't have to just be professional. Within the professional, we don't have to look just at bureaucratic work. We can also look at working for a business, working as a self-employed worker, working as a teacher, working as an artist, as an economist, who knows? There's many options. But also personal relationships, very important. How do you, a scenario in which you're described as having a number of friends and they're different personalities, you're not completely happy with how things are going, how do you address this? If you're alienated, if you're not alienated, if you use your prescience as a manifestation of anxiety toward either dismissiveness or evasiveness, or if you use your prescience as vocational and turn exchange and interactions with others into a collaborative project. It sounds very good on paper, and I think I do make a good case for this in this book. What does it involve in practice? That's what I'm going to be talking about. So I'm going to essentially take a lot of the themes that I've explored in the Ecstatic Soul, the question of fundamental, basic alienation, the experience of alienation. What does it mean? when you're in a relationship, when you're dating someone? What does it mean? What does it feel like? What can you do to address it? Haziness, phenomenon of haziness. I've addressed this in some of my videos. Can I explore this further? Can I give more concrete cases? What is it? How do you address it? Prescience, embodiment. All these topics will be fleshed out and given a concrete, practical illustration, series of illustrations, of course, interspersed with bits of theory and linking back to this book. There will be a clear genealogy linking this original book to the next one. But the purpose is more of a practical guide, if you like, because the theory now has essentially been laid out. I think this book is telling me, Ren, it's time that we put an end to this video. But no. Well, I mean, I'm going to end it because it's already been a while, but it's so nice though. Look at this. So the Ecstatic Soul is this book. In the next book, I don't know what I will call it. It will obviously have a different cover, but what you have to take back from this video is that the next book is going to be a book that you'll want to get. If you like the Ecstatic Soul, you'll want to get the next one, because the next one is going to be about how this ecstatic soul can be a happily practical, thriving person in the actual world of actual people and objects and real life situations. And when I said that, I wanted to give you an indication of how you can contribute to this, the first thing that I should say is you've already contributed plenty to this by all your comments, your thoughtful comments. I don't reply to all of them, but I do read all of them. And sometimes the comments I don't reply to are the comments that get me thinking the most. Sometimes I don't reply because I don't know what to reply, but I still think about it. And I get insights. And I think a lot of that is going to feed that next book. You can also contribute by continuing to provide information, comments, and how you feel about this next project in the comments down below, and give me a like and subscribe, of course, if you're so kind and not already subscribed. And like I'll be exploring further in future videos, you could also, if you care about Jungian existentialism, if you care about the work of an INFJ, producing more and more literature about INFJs and pushing the envelope in the field of Jungian psychology and typology, support me on Patreon. It's an account that I'm soon to open, and I'll make a video announcement about it, but maybe to get you used to the idea. And I've been thinking more and more, and I think maybe I can have different packages with different associated benefits, including the possibility of some personal coaching. And you can let me know what you think about that in the comments, because I'm still not sure if this is what I want to do. I know I can do it, but let me know if you would be interested. In the meantime, like I said, subscribe, like, comment, and I'll see you soon, guys. Happy Christmas. Bye-bye.